We found Vasiliev on the northern outskirts of Komarovka. The Mitnitsky groves were burning ahead, airplanes were roaring overhead, and the rumble of explosions was rolling across the steppe. The division lurked near the ground. Only occasionally, when the planes flew by, a Red Army man would run from bush to bush, or one or two cars would rush to the forest at breakneck speed. We had to leave the tanks in the forest, near the division headquarters, and try the speed of our legs. Vasiliev advanced in the morning for 13 kilometers, reached near the village of Ostrov River Plashuvka, a tributary of the River Styr. Here the German aviation stopped the division, and it is from half a day hiding in the surrounding dock groves. But this is only until evening. With the onset of darkness, as Vasiliev reported to the general, the division will resume the offensive until the fulfillment of its task. One circumstance worried Vasiliev. The entire first echelon of the rear of the division vehicles with fuel and ammunition burned in the forest from bombing. However, so far the units do not feel lack of anything. After listening to Vasiliev, Ryabishchev said that he came to him only because of the lack of communication with the division. He ordered to investigate why the radio did not work and bring the culprits to trial. "Comrade General," reported Vasiliev, "not only you, I myself could not call my own radio until I came here." "And why?" "Because my headquarters was scared so that it wouldn't. To avoid being bombed, ordered all the radios to be turned off. That's the reason and the specific culprits. Sort it out personally, and next time for the lack of communication you'll be held accountable to the fullest extent." "Yes, remember this." Having learned that the Divisional Reconnaissance Battalion suffered no losses, Ryabishchev ordered Vasiliev to allocate a company in his Reserve Corps intelligence. "Send it to me for a day, let them be at hand. I'll bring them back later. I have, aviation crippled half of them," explained Ryabishchev his order. "When I passed this order to my commander, he said to me, 'You know where the Corps headquarters is? Well, go to the Corps.'" General Ryabishchev, without waiting for Popel, left for Mishanin's division, and I, having collected my company, went by the forest road to the Corps headquarters. There was no headquarters at the old place. The same wrecked vehicles and the same white pigeon-like sheets from the headquarters files, but not a single living person. The search along the forest was not successful. "There's no need to look for them here. Let's stand by the highway at the edge of the place. We'll catch someone," advises Viper. I accepted his advice, placed the company in the gardens on the northern outskirts of Brod, near the highway, and began to wait to see if a commander who knew the situation would come across. Having put the officers on duty at the crossroads, I approached the hut and saw a surviving corps radio station. It was under a canopy. "And where is the headquarters?" I asked the station manager. "We don't know." "And how did you get here?" "We disguised ourselves from the bombing." "And communication with the headquarters?" "We have no communication with anyone. No one answers our call signs. They're all silent." Remembering how Vasiliev explained the lack of communication to Ryabishchev, I thought it's the same here. They're afraid of radio like the devil. "Admit it, comrades, that you did not even think of turning on the radio while the aviation was flying. You were afraid, weren't you?" I snapped at the radio operators. They were silent. I ordered them to call our division. Oh, in a minute the division radio answered that the old master left long ago to his son, and the little one recently left for home, so Popel is coming this way, I decided. A liaison came running from the crossroads and reported that the motorcycle company of the headquarters had arrived. When I met the commander of this company, who was coming to me, I learned that he had also fled with his company to the forest from the army, had lost his headquarters, and was now looking for it. He agreed to my proposal to stay with me. When we went to the crossroads behind the company, Popel was already there. He stood with a tank under the outermost house on the highway and held up everyone going to Brody on both roads, both fighters and commanders. People, feeling guilty, kept making excuses. "We are going to the city. We lost our commanders." "Well, if you have lost them, I'll find them now. I'm a god and a senior military commander. Go out of the forest and take the defense," ordered Popel. having appointed commanders and indicated the area of defence, he said. The company is replenished at the expense of the retreating. They went both by road and field, alone and in groups, unstable people who had not seen real war and real commanders' hands. Some of them reported that the Germans had captured 2 of our generals Ryabyshev and Meshanin. Popple began to check this rumour on the radio. From the 2 divisions replied that they do not have Ryabyshev. Division Meshanina and Corps headquarters did not answer. At the risk of being without motorcyclists, Popple sent them one by one to search for Comcorps and headquarters. Finally, managed to find arrived at the old place Staba Deputy Chief of Intelligence and Deputy Chief of Communications Corps. Popple now gives the Deputy Chief of Communications order to divisions continue the offensive and go to the planned areas. It is necessary to make people work, it will prevent panic, he explains. Since midnight, the German aviation has been intensively lighting up Brody and continuously bombing it. Forest fires are burning in the darkness of the night. They seem to be born out of the ground after the airplanes fly by. Phosphorus for panic, the devils. Popule curses. Maybe the drizzle will break up and put them out, I think. In the morning, in the grey drizzle, we leave the defence and go to Brody to check who is in the place from ours. On the road, we come across vehicles and tanks of Meshanin's division that have been put out of action. We wonder how they ended up here. On the southern outskirts of Brod, at the fork of the road Tarnopol-Zolochev, there is a tank under the house, around which the general is walking. Having approached, we recognise Meshanin in him. And he's here, I say to myself in bewilderment. Popple asks the general something, but he doesn't answer. The lieutenant, his adjutant, says that the general does not recognise anyone, that he is concussed. During a German air raid on the battle lines, the general was dug out of the ground twice. Having learned from the adjutant that General Ryabyshev arrived in Brody together with the division, we hurried to look for him. He was standing with a group of headquarters workers at the outermost houses on the Zolochevskaya road. And according to eyewitnesses' stories, you were captured by the Germans, Popple says, approaching him, laughing. He reports to the corps commander about everything that happened during the night, in particular about his order to divisions. It turns out that in carrying out this order, Vassiliev overnight advanced far ahead. How Vassiliev is advancing? Excitedly asked Ryabyshev. Yes, he is advancing. Ryabyshev clutched his head. Now he in turn informs Popple about what happened where he was. And what had happened there was this. Since the evening, when Ryabyshev arrived at Meshanin, the division went on the offensive at Beresteko. Meshanin was already concussed, so Ryabyshev had to deal with his division himself. At Beresteko, the radio order of the front was received the corps to withdraw behind the heights defended by infantry, to the forest south of Zolochen. Not having radio communication with any division, the general sent his order to withdraw by liaison. Meshanin's division he himself withdrew from the battle and began to withdraw with it, pursued by the German Air Force. But the worst thing is that the Germans, having noticed the withdrawal of the division, followed it on their heels, barely held back by the battalion left to cover it. The tragedy, Nikolai Kirillovich, all in the fact that we led the Germans in the middle of the battle orders of the corps, and Vassiliev's division even the rear, said Ryabyshev. He ordered his operational department to contact Vipsil Jepi, to give him an order for immediate withdrawal to the area of Zolochev, as well as to inform the other divisions about the appearance of the Germans on their flanks. No sooner had he given this order than a radio operator came running with a radiogrammer report that at 6 a.m. on June 27th, Vasiliev's division, through a communications delegate, received a written order from Ryabyshev to withdraw to Zolochev, and that it would start withdrawing in an hour. Ryabyshev is out of control with anger. He threatens to put on trial the delegate of communication for the fact that he was late with the order. The staff and the chief of communications get it from him. In the midst of this hot drive, the brigade commissar, head of the political department of the front, arrives and brings a written order from the front cancel the withdrawal, the corps to continue the offensive in the direction of Dubno. It is hard to imagine how one can fulfill this order. The German tanks are in the middle of the corps, fighting order, the headquarters is broken. Communication with the front and divisions is supported by one radio. How can you reorient divisions on the move? And here we have to close the void created after the withdrawal of Mishanin's units, and not to let the Germans into Brody. It's good that since morning it started to drizzle, and low cloud prevents German aviation from reappearing over our columns. Yes, the situation is not cheerful, but nevertheless both of them, both Ryabyshev and Popol, are especially lively and active. Looking at them, you think, yes, it would be sooner to fight again. After all the hardships of combat life, the whole mess of marches, regrouping will end when the first salvos of cannons. Then comes the real soldier's suffering, what the soldier is called to, and for the sake of which he endures hardships. Popol makes every effort to stop on the approach to Brody Rearguard Battalion and turn it back to yesterday's initial positions of the division. Ryabyshev dictates orders, draws new red arrows on maps for divisions, sends liaisons with orders. In the midst of this work to the Corps headquarters, half an hour after the brigade commissar arrived with the order of the front, the chief of artillery of the front arrives with a copy of the same order. It turns out that the front headquarters, during the whole night having no communication with the Corps and not knowing where it is, sent 3 copies of the order on different roads to Brody. So of the 3 messengers, 2 had already arrived. General Ryabyshev, having learned that it was a copy of an order already known to him, did not take his eyes off the case. To close the void on the front of Mishanin's division, the right flank Maypolk of its neighbour is transferred there. Disordered units Mishanin gathered and headed to the village of Sitno on the highway to Dubno, the main direction of the upcoming offensive. So far, Ryabyshev's decision seems to be reduced to the following: the Corps sends a forward detachment of a tank division to capture and hold the line of Ivane Pusti, Verba, Dubno, until the approach of the rest of the corps, which should arrive there tomorrow morning after being withdrawn from the battle and surrendered to someone defence. In the advanced detachment is assigned to our division, as it is not bound by the enemy and is in the direction of the upcoming offensive. Corps headquarters Ryabyshev moves to the forest southwest of Sitno. The first to go there is a battalion of T-34 Regiment Volkov together with himself. Upon arrival in the area of Sitno, Popol immediately began to interview all the commanders passing along the highway, and as a result of this, while our scouts, as he put it, collected data that clarified the situation in the area of Dubno and Kremenets, we learned that in the morning the Germans took the town of Kremiayets, the villages of Kozin, Verba and the town of Dubno, and Kremenets was taken by a detachment consisting of armoured cars and light tanks, which is about to be cut off by our rifle division, standing in the forest near the village of Grada, west of the city. To clarify these data, Popol sent out the entire corps reconnaissance. Coming into contact with the enemy, the reconnaissance established the front line. Krivulia and I managed in the village Ivashchuki to steal a captured motorcyclist from the hesitant scouts of some rifle division. They were taking him to their headquarters. He tried to escape, and we intercepted him. I wanted to return the prisoner to the infantrymen, but Krivulia convinced me that firstly, it was their own fault, they took him. So they should have kept him, we were not obliged to catch him. Secondly, we were advancing today, and therefore it was in the interests of the infantry to give us the prisoner, at least mutually. Tomorrow we'll reimburse you 100-fold, said Krivulia. The prisoner turned out to be a very talkative man. He said that from the 12th Panzer Division, as part of the reconnaissance, arrived at the front line of the 14th Panzer Division, one of the companies which occupied the village of Kozin. There he looked into a cooperative, drank Russian vodka, then went the wrong way, got lost and somewhere across the river met Russian soldiers, colleagues, as he put it. So in front of us at the boundary of the river Plazoka parts of the 14th Panzer Division, and somewhere on the approach the 12th Panzer Division. At 12 noon, a member of the military council of the front arrived at the headquarters of the Corps. They say that after a report on the situation, Ryabyshev, member of the military council, said, "Why did you retreat yesterday and did not fulfill the order of the front?" Even such details are passed on. Ryabyshev, in an old man's way quack, asked, "And what is this retreat? Such fighting I do not know." Popol also said that he had no idea what it is retreat. There is no such word in the Red Army regulations. We know such kind of combat as maneuver defense. But yesterday the Corps was on the offensive. It seems to have emerged from the analysis of the case that last night the frontline communications delegate incorrectly informed the commander. Not reaching Ryabishev's headquarters, he saw tanks going into the forest from under the bombardment of German aviation, individual soldiers going to the rear, crews of dead tanks. He took it for the withdrawal of our units, and, returning, reported that Ryabishev was retreating, while the corps was advancing and had already fought near Berestakok, came to the Stia and Plashuvka. Now it is clear why we received last night an order to withdraw to the Zolochiv defensive line, which was then cancelled by a new order to attack on Dubno. I heard that at the end of the conversation Popol said to a member of the military council. Our tanks today will once again prove that the concept of retreat for them does not exist. Today I will be in Dubno. Good, said the member of the military council. I give you the opportunity to fulfill your promise. I appoint you head of the advanced detachment. The member of the military council informed the Corps headquarters that Kleist's main blow was directed at the area of Lutsk-Dubno-Rivne, that Kleist had about 4,000 tanks and sought to seize the crossings of the river Ikviva, as well as highways to Rivne and Kremenets. The front commander decided to simultaneously strike from the north, east and south to encircle and destroy Kleist's tank army in the Dubno area. Popol's detachment is assigned the task to take Dubno by all means before Kleist's main forces approach, and to hold this line until the main forces of our corps approach, with the movement of which the actions of the other corps assigned for this operation are coordinated. That's why I appoint you chief, said a member of the military council Popol for firmness. Popol asked Ryabishev to give him a battalion of T-34s led by Volkov, which came to Sitno. Having transmitted by radio that Vasiliev should pull his units to march in the direction of Sitno, Popol approached Ryabishev and said, Dmitry Ivanovich, don't forget I am waiting for you in Dubno. Ryabishev silently embraced Popol, pressed him firmly to his chest and kissed him 3 times. Unclasping his arms, he uttered only one word. I will not forget. Popol took on his tank for the turret gunner of the head of the Special Department of the Corps, Battalion Commissar Oksyn, and took us to Sitno, where stood in defence battalion of tanks Volkov. This is the general's order, and this is the chief to the order, Popol said to Volkov, handing the order and pointing his finger at himself. For Volkov this order was happiness. He stretched out in front of Popol, dashing visor, and fired a volley. Ready. Where and what do you want to do? They say that Volkov was very dissatisfied with his first fight yesterday. This is explained by the fact that he dreamed of a real tank attack when the opponents go at each other. He wanted to test the quality of his T-34s, which he is in love with. Before the war, Volkov spent days and nights in his machine park. It came to the point that his wife came to the park to find out what was wrong with her husband. He knew the vagaries of each machine. He could tell by the sound of the engine what kind of mechanic the tank was. During our endless marches, Volkov had become exhausted, blackened by sleepless nights and running from car to car at every stop. He could not reconcile himself to the fact that his equipment is rolling in the rear, and, meeting with Vasiliev, complained, I cherished and saved every car for the battle. I want to hit so that the Germans forgot what to call them. And here we are, riding like a male triple, 200 miles a day, and here comes the long-awaited first battle. But what kind of a fight is this? He was indignant. Look, there is a German machine, trembling, tail tucked, hiding its head behind a barn and yapping from under the fence. To Volkov's question, where and what do you order to do? Popol replied. I'll order you to beat German tanks, and where I allow you to beat them wherever you find them on the road to Dubno and in the city itself. But you see how to beat them? He suddenly asks mysteriously. Here, perhaps, you should consult me. Popol's advice was as follows: Volkov's battalion, the head echelon of the detachment, to occupy the town of Dubno by the end of the day. I and one of my platoon will be assigned to the reconnaissance organization, which will go ahead of the battalion's main marching outpost. That's why we're doing it this way. Popol explained to Volkov his formation of the advanced detachment. It's cloudy and drizzling. German aviation will not interfere with us. Let's go in one column, and such a clenched fist to break the skull of any Kleist. Having given the order and explained what to what, Popel left to Vasiliev, who, having built his units in a column, was waiting for him. Taking the first platoon with Krivulia, I went along the highway familiar to me on Sitno, expecting, while the battalion stretches out, to go 5 kilometers ahead. From the outskirts of the village, a platoon of T-34s came out on the highway ahead of us. In the hatch of the turret of the lead vehicle is a familiar figure with a proud posture, leaning on arms bent at the elbows. Now this tanker, apparently, was interested only in one thing: to jump out on the highway ahead of my platoon. Trying to do this Perepelitsa, it was, of course, him almost hit my car, which was on the same level with him. He braked his own car on the slope of the ditch. Having dodged the collision, the angry Viper rebuked Perepelitsa. "Comrade Lieutenant, don't you know that there should be a road ahead?" "I know that I'm scouting, so I'm giving way," Perepelitsa smiles. "And who are you?" I ask him. "We are Gepis," he answers meaningfully, "the head sentinel." I make an agreement with the head of the head outpost to follow us at a visual distance, as the enemy is only 10 kilometers away. Krivulia advises me to go not on the highway, but on the right, on the road. On the highway will go marching outpost. We have the same radio wave, it facilitates information. After listening to Krivulia, I led the platoon along the embankment of the railroad going to Dubno. Observing from Rudnia village, I noticed 5 German tanks on the northern outskirts of Ivane Pusti. I reported it to Volkov by radio. Volkov ordered the marching outpost to destroy them without noise, and me to continue moving by detour. The head of the outpost sent to me in Rudnia Perepelitsa with 2 tanks. Having crossed the river Plashuvka between 2 lakes, we hurried by willow trees to the station. I turned my platoon further northeast along the railroad line, and the T-34s, coming up from the rear to the bridge on the highway, 2 shots removed both tanks standing there and closed the departure of the rest, which, judging by the turmoil in Ivan Pust, was much more than the 5 I noticed. In an effort to break through the bridge, they went on the attack, but the core of the outpost opened fire on them from the left. Taking advantage of the superior caliber of their guns, the T-34s shot the German tanks from 2 kilometers away. The bridge quickly disappeared from my eyes, but I realized what had happened there when I heard the firing stop and saw the German tankers fleeing from the village on foot. At the same time, Vasiliev's column of tanks was descending from the heights west of the village to the highway at high speed. Without stopping, we moved on along the railroad to the highway. To the left of us is empty, and suddenly we see a column of tanks and vehicles coming out on the highway from a side road and moving to the village of Verba. The head of the column has already disappeared in the village, and its tail is not visible behind the high rise. The cars appear at the fork of the road one after another with methodical precision, strictly observing the distance. "Mother of God, how many of them?" Shakes his head Nikitin. I call Volkov. I hear the radio operator's voice. I ask him to pass the headphones to Volkov, inform him about the movement of the tanks, tell him the place from where I am observing them. "Don't move," he orders me. "I'll strike on the move. I'm approaching Granovka." This means another 5 kilometers, I think, and hear how Volkov transmits my data to the radio operator Popel, and how he informs him that Popel has already passed Sitno. Krivulia points me to the ravine ahead and to our left. "Here, devils, they're coming." On the road from the village of Smolyan in our direction moved 2 German tanks and 2 motorcyclists. It won't be possible to get behind the farmhouses, I thought. On this cursed place around the excavation, undetected will not advance. They'll find us as soon as the engines puff smoke when they start. The German patrol will go, of course, to Verba, parallel to the highway. To do that, he'll have to turn off. On the field road near that barn over there. The terrain there is completely open. Even the railroad embankment is barely visible. If they climb the railroad embankment before Volkov gets there, we'll be forced to open fire. We need at least 4 shots. That's enough to rattle the convoy that sent out the patrol. Then it's all gone. The Germans will have time to take the battle order and meet Volkov at point-blank range. I calculate that there are 8 minutes left before Volkov's approach. It will take approximately the same amount of time for the German patrol to reach the crossing. So, the whole matter is decided by seconds. Krivulia, jumping off the car, rakes the top of a nearby haystack. Guns back, camouflage with hay. I ordered. Crews began to quickly throw hay over the tanks, trying to make them look like haystacks, densely standing along the railroad. The German motorcyclists were moving ahead of their tanks, well ahead of them. If they skip straight into the farm and pay no attention to us, we will win 2 or 3 minutes. I calculated and radioed to Volkov that on the highway traffic continues. I observe complete order the Germans. Apparently, do not suspect anything, but there is a side watch on me and I cannot go anywhere. Press the speed, I ask. Let's fly. Volkov radios. 4 kilometers to go. Don't move. I can hear in my headphones how he breathes excitedly, and how, forgetting about the intercom, tearing up, trying to outshout the noise of the engine, gives a command to his mechanic, give me speed, give me gas. And again, turning to me, worrying, asks, do whatever you want, but don't make a sound, and suddenly, hesitating, he orders. Die, but silently. Leaving the tanks far behind, motorcycles arrow flying towards us. They're already halfway there. I give the command to stop camouflage, and all sit in the tanks, without my signal no one to shoot. Let the Germans climb all over you, but don't make a sound. We have to win 2 or 3 minutes, I say, but I think no, we will not be able to do it in 3 minutes. They are not going, but flying. Devils. They had already passed 3/4 of the road. Nervous tension was increasing in me, it seemed, with the same speed with which the motorcyclists were approaching. I was out of breath. Suddenly the motorcyclists turned to the right to the forest, which started 1/2 kilometer from their road. They turned to look through the forest. Krivulia shouted to me, and I was already calculating in my mind how long it would take the motorcyclists to get to the forest, look around the edge, and come back. 2 minutes, I calculated and thought. I'd like to win 1 more minute. Barely had the German tanks equaled the forest when the motorcyclists burst out of it, and, overtaking the tanks, raced toward us. Ready, I shouted, and again, holding my breath, began to follow them. Here they disappeared behind the railroad bed. I could no longer see them. By the sudden silence of the engines, I realized that the motorcyclists had stopped. They're watching, I thought, but for what? Come on, devils, hurry up, by God, we won't shoot. Nikitin, who had been watching silently through the triplex all the time, spoke. That was enough to make Viper speak. The nut has withdrawn, comrade student, on God already hope. Listening to the noise of motorcycles running on low gas, I thought from the side of the crossing the tanks are covered with hay well. From there, without coming close, you can't make out what it is, but from the side of the farm badly, the sides are bare. They will notice if they look closely. The noise of Volkov's tanks approaching was already heard behind them when the motorcycles, rumbling in low gear, appeared at the crossing. The front motorcycle rolled down and, moving away, clattered its engine, while the rear one almost stopped on the embankment. I thought I met the motorcyclist's surprised look in my periscope. But the motorcyclist must not have noticed anything. Gaining speed, he rushed to the farm following the first. In 1 or 2 minutes, the German tanks, clanking their tracks and howling pitifully, came over the embankment and turned to the left to the road to Verba. At the same moment, a single shot of a T-34 tank rumbled heavily on the highway, and the exultant voice of Lieutenant Colonel Volkov sounded in the earphones. Crush them, comrades. Crush the bastards, my dears. In joy, I shouted the command so loudly that when the German tanks suddenly stopped for some reason, it seemed to me that they stopped because they had heard my voice. I slightly corrected the horizontal aiming and, having fired, I shouted, "Don't open your mouth, you rascal!" "Or the crow will fly in," added Nikitin, sending a second shell into the cannon. Shots rumbled around me, and I saw how both tanks sparkled. Done. Both. Laughing, Nikitin reports and opens the hatch. In my earphones I hear Volkov's command, Trofim. Trofim. Go around the village on the left. Push the whole railroad. Come on, take the next village, Taicha. Damn deaf. Taicha is the next village. Attack. I call Volkov and report that the patrol has been destroyed. I continue the reconnaissance to Verba. Scout, he shouts back at me. Don't look closely and don't sniff around, it's too late. But attack Verba, break forward to Dubno. Do you hear me? Be the archangel in front and bring order on the highway. Fly, my dear, fly. From the heights from behind which the German tanks appeared, now scattered in a chain, are flying our BT and T-34. They seem to chew up the German column. Behind them the highway is completely clear. German cars and tanks are thrown off the road, broken. They are smoking in the field. Some, trying to save themselves, are bogged down in the swampy meadow. Clearing the highway, Volkov's tanks are leaving behind the village of Smoliana. Only one of their long chain, having shelled the head of the German column, forked over the ridge, went bypassing to the village of Taicha. In my headphones I hear Popel's voice. Volkov, I see you, I see your work. Well done. No one will tell you that you ate bread for nothing. Don't stop. To Dubno. I'm sending Mazayev to help. Turning east to Verba, we approached this village in a field in a deployed formation. Our men weren't there yet. German cars, which were trying to escape from the village on the field road, panic-stricken the street. When our tanks suddenly appeared, opened fire both to the left, along the highway, and straight along the street, the Germans, throwing cars, rushed out of the village into the willow trees growing along the edge of the swamp. We made our way with difficulty through the car-packed street and came out on the field road leading to the village of Taicha. The company sent by Volkov to bypass us was already in this village, as we were made aware by the gunfire coming from there, which was dominated by the solid notes of our T-34s. It was impossible not to admire these universal favourites of tankers. Having spilled out from behind the last rare row of peachy houses and stretched out in a wedge, they raced in the same formation with the BTS to the corner of the forest, in front of the column of Germans, swollen on the highway, like a tightly stretched vein. I gave the command moving along the railroad to Turkovichi, overtake the attackers, and Gadyuchka, just waiting for it, developed such a speed that our tanks, flying through the village, had time to make only 3 or 4 shots. Before each attack, Viper reminds if we attack, we should attack not only with speed but also with fire. Today we can't complain about speed, but we have no luck with fire. During the attack on the verbs, Nikitin Long could not reload the gun, the shell did not come out, and Gadyuchka, mocking Nikitin, who likes to express himself in precise technical language, poisonously asked, "No distracted, comrade student?" Having overtaken the attackers and swung across the highway, we jumped out on the heights near the village of Podluche, and here we and Nikitin again unlucky. The plane on the ground near the grove reports Gadyuchka. I see. I answer and shoot at the plane, around which people were fussing, pulling it by the wings, apparently turned. I don't see a rupture, Viper reports. I don't understand what's the matter. I shoot again. And Viper again ironizes. I don't see a rupture. The ground under the airplane, as if splashing, but there is really no rupture. I'm worried I'm taking the sight up a notch. And what do you shoot with, loader? Suddenly Viper asks Nikitin. I caught up and realized that in a fever I forgot to give the command load with shrapnel, and it is clear that Nikitin loaded with armor piercing. Having corrected my mistake, I fired a 3rd time. The cloud of rupture, finally, Zakucheryevlevshi, but it was too late. The plane, turning on the highway with a short sprint off the ground. The Viper literally howled in frustration. I am to blame, but this cunning, as usual, all blamed on Nikitin out of respect for the commander, and the arrows, of course, aimed at me. This time there was no altercation. Nikitin could not defend himself, also out of respect for the commander. Well, gone. Now he has a 2nd trump card, he told me quietly. He had to recognize the legitimate demand of the outraged mechanic to atone for his guilt at least 3 German tanks. Otherwise, hats apart. And the end of our company, said Viper. Dobre, peacefully replied Nikitin. Despite the constant peaking, my company is becoming more and more friendly, and we already during the battle feel at home in the tank. While our crew was busy with the airplane, other crews managed to set fire to several vehicles on the northern outskirts of Podlusia and thus block the exit of the Germans from the village. It was just in time because the tanks, which we overtook near Ptaicha, had already jumped out of the forest and entered the village. We hurried to the exit from the village to seal it more firmly and, standing behind the houses, opened fire on a group of German tanks, striving to break out of the cramped street on the expanse of the highway. They were chased by our T-34. His gun then appeared between the houses, sending shell after shell into the tail of the German column, then suddenly disappeared. Finally it appeared, and with a dozen BTS following it chased the Germans, no longer hiding behind the houses. When we hit one after another 2 front tanks, and the rest of them rushed to the left behind the houses, to the railroad, leaving on the highway a few cars following in the middle of the column, I saw Popple in the turret of the T-34. Blocking the highway with his tank, he shouted, "Gentlemen officers, come here, or do you think we have lackeys to open the doors for you?" The officers climbed out of the car one by one, and raising their hands walked toward Popple's tank. The last to get out of the beautiful passenger car was a tall officer, with a small head on a long neck, by the brim of his cap and epaulettes, all at once determined a general. His picturesque pose, he passed us with his arms thrown back, led our mechanic to admiration. "Wow, what a goose," said Viper, rubbing his hands with pleasure. But when he learned that we captured the entire headquarters of the 14th German Panzer Division and missing only the division commander himself, General Milche, who flew away on the very plane that we missed, the mood of our mechanic changed dramatically. And what did not have to listen to poor Nikitin for the fact that he loaded armor-piercing instead of shrapnel? Viper, calling me as a witness, demanded confirmation that the debt for Nikitin increased, that to 3 tanks per plane should be added to the 3 tanks for the general missed through his fault. "Do you hear?" I asked Nikitin, silent. "I hear," he answered. Without his morality, annoyance sucks under the spine. A debt is a debt. I'll pay it back in full and even with more than enough, but let the mechanic work with levers as well as with his tongue. This promised a new outburst of Gadiuchka's eloquence, but here came a company of T-34s headed by Volkov and Popple, having learned from him that part of the German column had broken through at Dubna, shouted, addressing everyone. "Hey guys, we have to catch up, don't we?" I scolded myself for having delayed near these Germans and gave the command forward, 4th, and we flew to Dubno. Behind my platoon, car after car, not lagging behind, were Volkov's tanks. On the edge of the city near the lakes, we scared away the German infantry, hastily shoveling the ground, bypassing Dubno from the west along the highway, crushed a column of vehicles, and, jumping out on the northern outskirts of the city, crashed at the bridge over the Eichfia into the tail of the German infantry column, calmly marching along the highway to Rovno. 3 cars burst into flames, one after another, in the middle of the bridge. A fire jam blocked the bridge. The Germans scattered from the highway and began to throw themselves into the river. I heard someone's rolling laughter nearby, and looking back, saw Popple sitting on the tank's turret. Winking at us, he pointed with laughing eyes at the Germans drowning and howling in the full-flowing Ikva, and shouted, "Look, they want to bathe. They're nobility gentlemen of the future landlords. It's hot to walk on Soviet soil." I am laughing too. Everyone is laughing, both those who are looking out of the turret, and those who are sitting in the tanks, and those who jumped out of their vehicles, chasing away from the shore a crowd of Germans, who were frightened by the cries of the drowning and hurried to get out of the water. Going forward and pointing his hand at the swimmers approaching the opposite shore, Popple shouts, "Give it to them. Don't spare a couple for the guests. Let them learn how to blow bubbles in our water." From all sides, machine guns rang out. From the eastern shore, a battery hit the bridge. "Look, a tank," Nikitin shouted in my ear, pointing to a bush on the other bank, from which stuck out a short, thick cannon. I pointed it to Krivula, who was standing next to me in his car, and dived into the turret myself. In the sight I saw that the German was hastily turning the turret, and his gun, passing my tank, stopped somewhere near. They are aiming at Popple, I thought, and fired at the turret. My shot was followed by Krivuli's shot, and the German tank, having lowered its cannon, went up in smoke. At the bridge, none of the Germans who had rushed into the river came to the other side, but further on, already in the city limits, up to a battalion of infantry still crossed the Eikvia River. Germans' infantry, tanks and artillery, which were leaving on the highway to Rivne, returned and took up the defence on the eastern bank. Having put a platoon of T-34s and a platoon of KBS in the grove against the bridge, Popple led us through Dubno back to Podlusia, where the headquarters of our advanced detachment was already located. The day was gloomy, it was drizzling, but by the evening the clouds parted, and the sun smiled at us with a friendly and encouraging smile and disappeared. We passed a quiet ancient town with only one factory chimney, surrounded by meadows and swamps of the full-flowing Ikva. It already bears the stamp of war. On the western outskirts, several large buildings are shrouded in smoke. The church gapes with its doors torn off their hinges. In the city centre, the sidewalk is strewn with broken window glass. On the sidewalks lie the corpses of murdered residents. The result of the first combat day of Popple's advanced detachment was not bad. The 14th Tank Division of the Germans was defeated on the march. Several dozens of serviceable tanks and hundreds of prisoners were taken. A 20-kilometre-long line was occupied and held Ivane Pust, Verba, Teicha, Podlusia, Dubno. As shown by captured officers, Kleist in our direction operates 6 divisions. These are 4,000 operational tanks, not yet been in combat, only yesterday introduced into the breakthrough. They're tasked to seize the crossings on the Eikvia River, with the support of aviation to enter the operational space in the direction of Kremenets and Rivne, to disrupt the rear of our army, forced march to the Dnieper, and to seize the Dnieper bridges, and thus complete the encirclement of Soviet troops in the right bank Ukraine. All this must be done in 2 weeks, captured by us in the captivity of the Chief of Staff of the division, firmly confident of success. It turns out that yesterday morning they were already aware that the corps of General Ryabyshev is moving on Dubno. Kleist's light armoured covering division, with which we fought yesterday, is exsanguinated, but still it delayed our advance. Kleist took advantage of this and outpaced us with his 14th Division from the southern direction, and the 18th passed on Rovno from the north. I shared this information with Krivulia, and we exchanged views with him on the plan of the front to destroy Kleist's army. Our opinions agreed. Despite all the advantages that Kleist has, he will be destroyed. This is vouchsafed by the selfless bravery and devotion to duty of our soldiers and commanders. With a cocoon they performed their duties in yesterday's and today's battles. My crew came to the same conclusion at dinner, drinking the Bordeaux found under the seats of the German staff cars. Krivulia measured out all instead of a charka on the lid of a tank thermos. Nikitin and Gadiuka, forgetting about the lost plane and the departed general, eat from one tin can and give each other a cup. After dinner I was called to the commander. I received the task to deliver a package to the corps commander and the order to the second echelon of the rear to bring fuel and ammunition. The rear of the division stood on the southern outskirts of Zablotz. I arrived there at dawn on June 28th and only handed over the written order when I heard a shout. Germans. Tanks. With Captain Stadnik, Chief of Staff personnel of the headquarters, we ran out onto the highway on which the column of the Repair and Recovery Battalion was pulling out. Light tanks, up to 50 pieces, walking in the rye, no infantry visible, reported to Captain Stadnik his assistant. Senior Lieutenant Karchenko, who jumped up in a pickup truck. Take the grenades, all line up in platoon formations, drivers stay behind, Captain Stadnik commanded. From car to car along the column flew. Grenades, form up. Among those who ran, I saw a familiar to me political officer, Belivitnev. He ran into the rye with a platoon of reserve tankers. I, on the instructions of Captain Stadnik, took a position with my tank behind the outermost houses to meet the advancing fire from here. The Germans have already come within firing range, but I can hardly see them. The light tanks, armed with only large-caliber machine guns, are completely drowned in the rye. Apparently, the Germans can't see much around them either. I decided to hit the front tanks, expecting that the rear ones, seeing the burning vehicles, would turn back. The first shells I sent to 2 German tanks far bypassed our left flank and rushed along the highway to the tail of the column. I did not have to repeat myself, both tanks emitted thick clouds of smoke. However, on the right, very close to me, there was a rifle crackle and grenade explosions. I hurriedly turned my turret, but I could not shoot. The rippling rye was stained with the overalls of our repairmen and the ribbed helmets of the reserve tankers. They pounded their rifles at the approaching tanks, threw grenades, dived into the rye and reappeared in a new place. I admired them and regretted that they prevented me from shooting. I would inevitably hit them. However, there was no need to shoot. Before my eyes, the crews of German tanks were throwing themselves out of their turrets into the rye. When I leaned out of the hatch to look around, the firing stopped. Our fighters were climbing on the German tanks standing motionless in the rye. Only one tank, smoking exhaust pipe, bursting, strived to get away from the place of battle. It was already at a distance unattainable for me. Spitting with frustration, I climbed out of the turret. Captain Stadnik came up to me. "Well?" I asked him. 3 were blown up, 12 are safe and sound. The Germans were spinning on the rye. They saw grenades from all sides. They threw the tanks and ran away. Hey, their skin is thin. Some commander laughed as he ran up to us. Now I'll take the tractors and will bring the commander a present from the rear. I remember this skirmish and think my role in it was nothing. It was grenade launchers, invisible in the rye, decided its outcome. They went bare-chested against the German armour, fought with it hand to hand, and the German armour gave up. As I see now, here they go, young, cheerful, ecstatic with victory. The war will introduce you to the whole world. On the way to the Corps headquarters, turning from the highway to the field road in the village of Krupetz, I stopped when I heard some rumbling. I don't understand where it came from. Ahead, towards the village of Sitno, is a clear field of rye. There is no movement on the highway. I look at the edge of the forest, which is half a kilometre away from me. A blue smoke drifts along the edge of the forest. What is it? It's Rybyshev's headquarters there by the highway. Suddenly BT tanks fly out of the forest with an arrow one, the second, and behind them a formation of sharp-nosed, fast-moving machines, deployed in a battle line. They fly along the flat field along the highway, dive in waves of green rye. Ours are attacking. With an enthusiastic tremor in his voice shouted Nikitin. What a dashing march. And he climbed out on the tower, all forward, not to miss a single movement of the attackers. We've never seen such a thing. He shouts to me. With a joyful beating heart, I go up to him. Behind me, Viper sticks out. But where is the enemy? To the left is a flat field. It is bordered by gardens and roofs of Sitno village, visible in the distance. It's quiet and peaceful. Only above in the sunny blue something suddenly happened, as if thick violet ink was dispersed. Giant purple ribbons streaked the sky, curving over our slippers, rushing to the attack. There, Hydra, she's got ink, Viper grumbles. Well, now hold on, boys, they'll swoop, vultures. He waved his hand in annoyance and disappeared into his hatch. And I got a pinch in my heart. I looked around, getting alarmed. To the left, from where everything is splashed by the sun, there is a rumbling sound. It seems that sheet iron is being dropped there, and a shell whistling close to me, flying towards the forest. Now it's clear. The Germans are in the village of Sitno. They met our attack with fire from the place. We can no longer hear separate shots, they merged into deafening roars. Now only a narrow green strip separates our tanks from the village. Several tanks froze on the run. Some are burning, others are standing, shrouded in bluish transparent smoke. Those remaining in the ranks are rushing toward the densely leafy gardens of the village, which meet them at point-blank range with gunshots. Here the heroes burst into the village, here the gardens closed behind them. The clang and rumble of artillery subsides. The sun rising to the zenith turned yellow, faded from the smoke blurred in the sky. It's over, whispers Nikitin. Ambush, suddenly shouted with anger. Comrade Commander, how can it be war? Where, tell me, aviation, artillery, infantry? How is it that we are fighting separately, each on his own? I've already had that question myself. We'll live, we'll see, I answered evasively. But we can't go back to the detachment by the old road. We must go to the headquarters to find out what to do. Again, there was a deafening rumble on the ground from the village. We froze when we saw ugly, monstrous machines of bright yellow, tiger colouring appearing from the gardens of Sitno. They rolled slowly in our direction, blazing with tongues of gunfire. I've never seen such machines before, Nikitin said. The Germans are moving in a line. I looked through binoculars at the nearest left flank tank, which broke out far ahead. Its outline reminds me of something. But what? Rheinmetall, I shouted out, remembering the picture of a German heavy tank, which I saw in the album of the school, and quickly blurted out heavy, gun 75, straight shot 800, armour 40. Comrade Commander, why are we standing and waiting like an ox for a shoe? Asks, leaning out of the hatch, Viper. With annoyance, without waiting for a command, he sharply pulled the bolt of the gun. Armour-piercing load. I machine commanded. Yes. Nikitin replied with a heart and Dopalavat shell slammed the bolt. No, I thought, remembering that I was carrying a package. It's not to fight, but to run away. Start. I shout to Viper. It would be good to get through the bushes to the height to be covered by its crest. It's only 50 meters away. I look through sparse bushes, how it would be better to skip under the German's nose. And I don't believe my eyes. From the corner of the forest, from where the BTS had jumped out earlier, now a slender chain of KVs is rushing, sparkling with shots. The tank nearest to us is going straight to the height. Its cannon, sticking out of a huge turret, is turned in my direction. If I move from my place along the planned route, as KB, seeing my tank, coming from the enemy's side, will undoubtedly hit it with a 50-kilogram stuffing there, won't be a wet spot left from us. But the flanked German is also approaching the height. His course lies past me. Now he will notice my tank in the bushes, and then also wait for a shell. What can I do with his frontal armour, having a 45mm gun? Friendly or foe, we're finished. Like hypnotized, I look at the gaping gun muzzle of the approaching KV. From above on its turret, half crouched, sits on all fours a small, bare-headed tanker. Leaning on the antenna with his hand, he quickly straightens up, looking somewhere through me, then crouches down again. Apparently, having smelled something bad, Nikitin came out of the turret. What a dovbionir, he exclaimed when he saw the VC coming at us. Viper started the engine. Puffing smoke, it roared as loudly as I think. I've never heard before. Shut it off, I shouted. Nikitin dived down, and the engine stalled. But it was too late. The German tank, which had approached us, noticed the smoke of the engine and moved the cannon in our direction. Get ready. Fire. I threw Nikitin and, having dived into the turret, ducked to the sight. A ribbed hulk was looming in the sight. Its turret, turning, was probing me with its cannon. I hoped to get ahead of it. I aim my crosshairs at the turret. Yes, I encourage myself and, keeping the turret in my sights, press the trigger pedal. The shot thunders. In the field of view of the telescopic sight, instead of the tank's turret, a cloud of smoke is billowing. What is this obsession? Where did the tank go? I think. It did not fall through the ground. And why is the pedal so tight? I think I did not feel the descent. I look under my feet, oh horror. Under the trigger pedal is a shell casing, and my foot is pressing the pedal on the bottom of the casing. I didn't reach the trigger, so I didn't shoot, so. But why doesn't the German shoot? I look out of the hatch. Right in front of me, on the place where I saw the German tank, mangled sheets of armour are lying and a black spot is smoking. Behind, the turret of our KV quietly turns to the right. So it turns out who fired. Yes, if it had hit my BT, there would have been no trace of us on the ground. Over the avalanche of German striped monsters here and there, smoke is rising in streams, rising in puffs. Nikitin looks at me with bewilderment from the hatch. He has not yet understood why I did not shoot. Will come. I think I'll tell him what a shell casing lying underfoot can lead to. The KB flanker still doesn't notice us. He's busy with another German. A shot, an explosion, and the German tank's turret goes off. The sides collapse. Half silenced by the shots of our saviour, Nikitin and I give each other a thumbs up and laugh with joy. The exorbitantly large head of a small tanker appears above the turret. From behind the crest of the heights a shot rings out. The daredevil's turret sprays a shower of sparks, and the shell ricochets over our heads. The little tanker dives inside the turret. Another shot, and another German heavy tank collapses. Are they cardboard or what, I think? Well, now I can safely approach KB and ask the commander standing on the turret if the Corps headquarters has moved. I run to him. The little tanker points to the KBS going in a deployed formation along the highway. We rush there. The miserable remnants of Rheinmetalls are running in panic to the village of Sitno. It's all so unclear, so confusing. Yesterday afternoon we defeated the 14th German Panzer Division in this direction, and this morning German tanks appeared here again, already in our rear, behind our lines. I am not happy with the fragments of conversation I heard at the Comcorps CP. Ryabyshev, when I came to him with a package, stood at the edge of the grove, leaning with his shoulder against a tree. Looking towards Sitno, where our KBS were still fighting among the burning BTS, he wrote something quickly on his tablet, then, without changing his posture, ordered to call a liaison from the commander of the Gerasimov mech division. I heard him say at the same time, addressing the Chief of Staff, Colonel Petrov, who was standing next to him. Reports that advances on Verba. What will come out of this I do not know, but the fact that because of him I did not get a fist in this place, this I already feel. Petrov, people haven't learned to fight yet. War will teach you, Comrade General. It will, but what will we fight with? How long will the BTS last? And Ryabyshev sighed heavily. Yes, the BT will indeed not last long. I remember the meeting of military representatives at the tank industry plants, the speech of the Commissar of the Armoured Forces Main Directorate, Comrade Aliliev, who attacked those who said, why take risks? Look for something, when we are quite satisfied with the existing proven designs. How good it is that our designers did not calm down, took risks, searched for new things, and now we have such designs as the T-34 and KB. It is only a pity that these wonderful machines, which delight our fighters and terrify the enemy, are still not enough. On the way back I saw not far from the railroad, near a burning German tank, one of our KV. Its whole crew was on top. Some were dancing on the stern, some were watching from the turret. I wanted to know how my comrades felt after the attack, what they were thinking about. I rode up to them and introduced myself to a skinny young man wiping soot and dirt from his face, which together with sweat streamed from under his sticky hair. KB Lieutenant Kuleba, commander of the reconnaissance platoon, he reported, jumping down from the tank. Well, how was the war? I asked, nodding towards the smoking German tank. The soul of Lieutenant Kuleba apparently asked for a discharge. He did not make me repeat the question and, having given the radio operator an order to call some Shatokhin, jumped on my tank and sat down on the turret. To tell the truth, Comrade Senior Lieutenant, he laughed. At first I was confused. Why? You see, the Germans clogged us in the morning, cutting the highway and taking up defences on the outskirts of that village over there. So the commander gave the order to knock them out and clear the highway to Dubno. The BTS went into the attack, and we were left behind the heights in reserve. We are standing, we can't see the Germans behind the ridge. The commander came running. He said that all the Batushki from the ambush were broken, and the Germans were attacking us. Just then the command forward and I led my platoon in a counterattack. I approached the ridge, and I saw a huge thing coming at me striped like a tiger, and like a house. About 2 times bigger than mine. I've never seen such a huge fool. Here I was confused, dazed, forgot what to do. I look at him in the telescopic sight, that's all. And the German must have been a brave man too. When he saw me, he even stopped. But then he came to his senses, turned the cannon around and hit me right in the turret. Flames in the turret, sparks from his eyes. And my turret man shouted, "The gun is ready." He was in the Finnish war, so it's not strange to him. I see the turret's intact, and everyone's healthy. Well, if that's the case, I said, "Take it, you bastard," and I fucked that fool between the eyes. She got her gun upside down. I fucked her with another one, and she put her paws up, and with this one he pointed to the tank smoking nearby. I've already done with it like a cook with potatoes. It's a pity I didn't get more. I kept an eye on the cars to prevent Gurkhas. All remained unharmed, but Shatokin only sent to the left flank to support from the side, so still does not go. "And what is he like?" I asked. "Shatokin? He's a heady, small, in General Company Munchausen, but a good soldier." I remembered a small, heady tanker sitting crouched on the turret KB and said, "I saw it. He's on the left flank, behind the high rise by the bushes. He broke 6 of them there." "Hey guys," Kuleba shouted to his crew. "Shatokin broke 6 of them. And when he comes back, he'll say it was 106. Everyone laughed. Kuleba jumped to the ground and, looking at the burning German tank, asked me, "Do you know what kind of tank this is?" "Rheinmetall." "It was Rheinmetall, but now it's metal, so we'll keep remodeling them. Do you agree with me, petty officer of the front?" He turned to his tank and lovingly patted it on the turret. Wishing them happiness, we moved on. At Sitno, the battle was heating up again. German aviation appeared in the sky. Will our rear be able to pull up to Dubno? Won't our advanced detachment be cut off from the corps? The thought of the lost BTs does not leave my mind. No, it is impossible for infantrymen, tankers, artillerymen, pilots to fight separately, as we are fighting now. I remember the first day of the war, Krivuli's battery, that saved my little ones. That's a lesson of interaction. I caught the command of the advanced detachment in the village of Verba. During my absence, the Germans attacked us in the southern section with a mass of heavy tanks, broke our cover in Ivan Pusta. Only one tank left at the same time occupied the village of Kozin on the Kremenets road. I also brought unpleasant news. The enemy has clearly turned south. The German heavy tank division, having reached the river Satenka along its entire course, took up defences to block the corps road to us. Ryabyshev broke through with 1 division Meshanin, fighting for Sitno. Metavizier Gerasimov trying to advance independently 10 kilometers to the right. In the morning, 1 battalion of infantry and an artillery division of howitzer regiment managed to pass freely in our direction. They are now on the approach to us. After the Germans destroyed our cover in Ivan Pusta, Popel strengthened the defence along the southern edge of the village of Verba with 4 T-35s, a platoon of T-26s and an anti-tank battery. The automobile battalion, sapper battalion, repair company and crews of tankers who had lost their vehicles were turned into infantry. At the expense of these units and parts, the detachment managed, without dispersing the tanks, to occupy a circular defence covered from the rear by the Ikvia River and from the front by a strong combat guard posted along the line of Mlenau, Sadi Mail, Pyrotin, Bialogrudka, Werber. When I learned that Krivulia and his company had left for reconnaissance, I went with Popil's headquarters to Bialogrudka. On the dusty road through the rye field we saw a large herd of pigs. In a purple-golden haze of whipped dust, pedigree Yorkshires with sunken flanks, exhausted by the crossing and the heat, were slowly walking. One of the herders, a peasant of about 50, wearing a vest over a linen shirt, threw off his fedora and said hello to me. "Will you please, comrade commander, tell us whether you will not take our pigs for meat, because all the pigs are going to burn to take a rest." "Why will they die out?" I asked. "Because it's already another day that we haven't been able to kill any part of the army. Today at night the Germans didn't take away much. They will not be able to endure another day like it was. Give our collective farm a certificate of what we have taken for the army as part of the supply, otherwise it will turn out that neither the state nor the collective farmers will have anything." I went to the regimental commissar Nemtsov and reported to him the request of the collective farmer, adding that the crews had not eaten today, and the kitchens were not sure when they would arrive. "You can't," he replied briefly. "The peasants will see us and think that we are looting. I'll tell you what he said to a collective farmer. You can drive the herd without hurrying, we'll cover you. It would be easier for the cattle to get to our troops. Thank you for your protection." Putting on a high-top hat with saggy brim, the collective farmer walked at the head of the herd on the road to Kremenetz. It's a pity it wouldn't be a bad idea to feed the crews. But the collective farmer was probably right, neither the state nor the collective farm. Unless Ryabyshev gets through to us. Arriving at Bialogrodka, Popple stopped at the western edge of the forest. Sleepless nights make themselves felt. "Nikitin," I ask, "wake me up as soon as our men arrive." I plop down on the stern of my car. Its ribbed shutters seem to me more pleasant than all pillows. I feel that I am pulled by my legs, as if an iron scraper pulls the back of my head and for some reason shouts, "Why?" Why I wake up. It turns out that Krivulia, who had returned from reconnaissance, woke me up and shouted, "Get up." I jumped up, learned that a column of German tanks was approaching Bialogrodka at high speed. I ran to the headquarters, thinking Bolkovitinov's regiment is behind Pike. Other tanks are far to the north. While they will be called, the Germans will smash our headquarters. Calm down, calm down. Orders Vasiliev. Let's counterattack with my KB and BT reconnaissance platoon. All personnel to Zofievka to repel the attack. BT there too, he shouted to me on the run. Germans, KB with me. 5 minutes later, I went out with my company to the southern outskirts of Bialogrodka. The Germans are moving in a column along the road which was travelled by a herd of pigs. They're about a kilometre away. No, they are not tanks. I clearly distinguish motorcycles with trailers, heavy armoured vehicles, followed by light ones. Popple's and Vasiliev's KBs have arrived. They stood in the garden to my right. Vasiliev is looking through binoculars at the German column. "Don't move," he orders. What kind of column could it be, I ask myself. This column does not suspect our existence. Impudently going, even the head sent a head watch. Vasiliev called me to him and set the task to break out at maximum speed to the tail of the column and press it from the rear to the forest. To develop maximum speed, I took my cars back behind the houses. I am impatiently watching when the red flag will rise above Vasiliev's tank, the signal to attack. I see the exhaust pipes of the KV smoked. Let's start the engines. I can hardly restrain myself not to give the command go, but now the KB has moved off. Vasiliev lowers in the turret and gives me a signal. With engines howling and speeding up, our tanks burst out from behind the house towards the grove. The Germans see us off with puzzled looks, not realizing what kind of tanks they are. By the suddenness of appearance and movement without fire, I gain time and reach the tail of the column, before the Germans realize that these are rushing Soviet tanks. Only now we open fire. We send shell after shell at the speed that Nikitin and I can give. Viper from below is shouting encouragement to us. Give it to him. Ready. Next on the right. Aha, ready. We look back. Far behind, echoing us with the base of their guns, 2 KB Vasilievs are moving. The Germans' heavy 3-axle cannon armoured cars are panicking and rushing to get off the road. Without firing back, they scatter on the edge of the forest like frightened cockroaches from under the raised floorboard. Cutting off the road for withdrawal back and across the field to Kozin, we spur them to the forest by fire. One by one, the German vehicles burst into flames. The field is engulfed in a disgusting-smelling oily smoke. The 3-axle heavy armoured cars, having reached the forest, stumbled into it. They cannot pass between the trees. The forest meets them with 45mm gunfire. This artillery platoon of our reconnaissance battalion came to the rescue. Vasiliev's tank at full speed hits the nose of a German armoured car. It overturns, and the tank with its whole carcass, with its nose and cannon up, climbs up on it and, having no time to pass over, settles down with a crack. The armoured car is crushed like an empty eggshell. Wow, what a press! Laughs Nikitin. Not many German vehicles managed to escape. Having opened the hatches, the soldiers threw themselves on the ground and tried to crawl through our ring of fire. According to the documents of the killed, it was established that we defeated units of the reconnaissance battalion of the 12th German Panzer Division. Vasiliev sent me with an order to Bolkovitinov, whose regiment occupied the defence in Tritony. On the way back, approaching the forest north of Pikey, where Popple stopped with his headquarters, I heard gunshots behind me and, looking back, saw that Zubov's tank, which was following me, had stopped and the crew was throwing earth on the stern of the burning vehicle. Zubov signalled to me the enemy is behind us. 2 kilometres away from us, north of Bialogrodka, German tanks with the strength of up to a regiment were turning into battle order. We were shelled by their reconnaissance. Taking Zubov's tank in tow, I dragged it into the woods to Popple's CP. There at the headquarters KB Popple and Vasiliev surrounded by a group of commanders, excitedly, interchangeably talking about the vicissitudes of the battle. I interrupted this lively conversation with a report on the appearance of German tanks. Popple immediately ran to the edge of the forest, shouting on the way, "Klopschi, follow me. Show." All the commanders ran out to the edge of the forest. Bombs are bursting in the distance. Popple, not paying attention to them, observes through binoculars the deployment of the Germans. "As soon as they are bombed out, the tanks will attack us," he says, being happy about it. The German tanks are deployed on the heights on the Bialogrodka side, 2 kilometres to the left of Tritina. But from Tritina they should not be visible lush gardens and curly grove on the southern edge of the village block Bolkovitinov's view. So his 2 battalions standing there will not come to our aid. "These, my friends and comrades, are not armoured cars," Popple said, lowering his binoculars and turning to us. "These, brothers, are the main forces of the German tank division. They came from Bud Devils. Clever. Well, and good." Vasiliev interrupts him. "The more of them in the field, the more fun for us. We won't have to run after them on the roads." "Oh, so good. It's very well said. There are no regimental tanks here. I wish we had them here." Popple says dreamily, "What do you suggest to counterattack?" he asks Vasiliev. "No, to attack." Vasiliev replies with a smile. "Strike from the left. People say when Ivan the left-handed man strikes, not everyone, not even a baptized man can withstand." He orders the adjutant to bring here all the tanks standing at the CP and arrange them along the edge of the forest. What's he up to? I try to puzzle out his plan. He calls me over. "Here's a written order for you. Dead or alive, hand it to LT. Cole, Bolkovitinov. The deadline is 15 minutes. As soon as the Germans attack me, let him hit them in the flank and destroy them. Put both battalions into action. Don't let him look back, that he doesn't have enough." Popple is shouting back at me. The houses and gardens of the scattered village of Tritony are flickering again. "Where are the Germans?" Reading the order, Bolkovitinov asked me. There I pointed to the southern edge of the village. Bolkovitinov ordered his combatants to remove both battalions from the defence and take them to the gardens of the southern outskirts, where he would wait for them. "Let's go there," he offered me, jumping up on his KV. It's hot, quiet. Only from afar comes the muffled noise of engines. Leaving the tanks in the garden of the outskirt hut, we climb up on its thatched roof. From here we can see the whole combat order of the enemy. The Germans are attacking in 2 echelons, built in chess order. I look at this precisely calculated movement, and it seems to me that someone invisible, hidden by a veil of dust and smoke, moves a huge chessboard on the field. "At least 200 tanks," says Bolkovitinov. A chill runs down my skin. I look back anxiously at the village. Where are ours? Every minute is precious. But the street leading to the centre of the village is empty and quiet. Only somewhere on the northern side I can hear the rumble of engines being started, and through the greenery I can see blue smoke. Ours are still gone, I say excitedly. "Ah, shit," swears Bolkovitinov. "If they're late, all is lost." There's a moment. Yes. Mazayev's battalion to the flank of the second echelon, BT battalion to the rear of the first. That's how I'll hit. He makes a decision out loud, and easily jumping off the roof, runs to my tank to hurry up the battalions. This is the moment I repeat to myself. If they're late, I'll get on his KB and hit the first echelon. I'll win the moment, and then Bolkovitinov will come up. Otherwise the attack of this mass will crush a handful of Popel and Vasiliev. But here on the right behind the huts, parallel to the street, T-26s glimmered. Here they come, here come the 26th. I shout joyfully to Bolkovitinov, who had already jumped on my tank. I'll be right there. I'll just set a task. Intercept the BT, he shouts to me and hides behind the garden. The Germans, as if sensing something, are keeping outside the range of direct shot. Can't they see me? Out of precaution, I press myself against the roof, watching the field from behind the chimney, worrying that Bolkovitinov is late with his attack, thinking what will happen to the liquid chain set up by Vasiliev at the edge of the forest. If this gigantic behemoth moving across the field piles up on it, the engine of the tank roars below. I look around, Bolkovitinov is back. Where is the first echelon? He asks, getting into his KV. It has equalized with us. The right flank is approaching the village. Where's the BT? Not yet. What should we wait for? I ask Bolkovitinov in impatience. Let's hit the first echelon together, or it will be too late. The second echelon is coming. I shout, seeing the second half of the chessboard approaching in a light cloud of dust. Medium, T4. Let's wait a little longer, Bolkovitinov replies and orders his deputy, who was sitting behind the turret, to signal Mazayev's battalion attack. Lo, over the very gardens, red rockets floated. Precisely at the wave of a hand, a line of T-26 tanks rolled out from the outskirts of the village into the flank of the Germans, a little to the right the second, further on the third. A ledge to the left, I determined the combat order. Mazayev is going. Now they'll get hitched. I shouted to Bolkovitinov. Well, now we'll attack. Get down. He commands me. You will be covered by my tank. Having disembarked his deputy and ordered him to direct the BT tanks behind him, he gives the mechanic a command. Forward. For the last time I look around the field, the distant edge of the forest. There is silence. No, I will not see those who stayed there, at the control center. Not to bring them glad tidings. I think with longing. I had already turned around to jump off the roof, when the first BT jumped out from around the corner. Behind it, kicking up dust, the rest of them flashed by. Stop, stop. I shouted in a voice I didn't realize I had. Don't stop, shouts Bolkovitinov. Let them take signals on the move. Signal the direction of attack and fourth speed. He raised a yellow flag signal attention, and I saw the first car clearly repeated it. They will understand. Rejoiced Bolkovitinov and repeated the command to the mechanic forward. His deputy commander barely had time to jump on the tank. I am overcome with exuberant joy. I dance on the roof. I climb up on the ridge and signal towards the forest, where Popel and Vasiliev's CP is. How I want them to understand me, not to worry when they saw only one KB of Bolkovitinov, which came out to attack, and even then with a delay. It's far away from them, they won't hear me, of course, but I shout as if they were here, next to me. It's all right. The BTS are already approaching my hut. With my left hand I show each car 4 fingers, which means fourth speed. With my right hand I give the direction of travel. The commanders nod their heads at me, I see. Lower their turrets, and the BTS, like arrows shot from a bow, roared their engines and flew out of the street. In a swift run they outrun Bolkovitinov's KB, and before my eyes eat up the space separating them from the first German echelon, which, moving away towards the forest, does not see the pursuit behind it. But here Bolkovitinov's KB stopped, flames flashed from his gun, the right flank German tank went up in smoke. The BTS broke into the Germans' formation, friendly and often working with their cannons. Echoing them, a chain of gun flashes flashed from the forest on the KP side. Vasilyev's KB and Popol's T-34s came out from behind the forest ledge. Rolling over, they went towards the German avalanche. And I was afraid that the German formation would crush them. They came out to meet it, as knights, armoured in armour. German tanks are no threat to them. They wore the invulnerable Soviet steel. The battle has begun. Everyone is in action, I say to myself, with all my heart feeling the high solemnity of the moment, and, having taken one last look at the battlefield, I roll down from the roof to my tank. On the run I command Viper forward, 4th. The tank carries me out of the garden into the field, covered with the acrid smoke of burning tanks. "Where to?" Nikitin asks. I look back. There, in the middle of the field, between the forest and the village, tanks scattered in groups are burning, fighting as if pulled to the middle of the German echelon. If so, it means that ours is taking. I look ahead, where 2 kilometers away from the battle zone of Mazayev. I think if he fails to shoot down the second echelon of Germans, they will fall on our BTS from behind. To the right, to Mazayev, I command. There are 4 broken right-flanked German tanks smoking in a chain, and further on there are 6 more burning machines, staring with their noses to the forest. Not a single of our T-26. It can be seen that the suddenness of the blow in the flank succeeded brilliantly to Mazayev, rushing on. Here stands our burning tank, and behind it burns a German tank with a cannon directed towards the village. So, here, at this place, the Germans noticed the flank attack and turned back. They are shooting away, trying to get away from our T-26s. More and more of our tanks are being hit. In the rear are wandering EKP-11G who have lost their vehicles, flicker bandages. Some of them are carried on their hands, some of them are supported under their arms. But not a single face does not show despondency. One shines on the faces of tankers passing by us. I approach a group of broken German tanks. Behind each of them are 2 of our T-26s and, having turned their turrets, are hitting the retreating Germans. "Why are you standing there?" I asked the commander who looked out of the turret. The commander put them in an ambush in case of a counterattack. I put my tank next to his, covered by a broken German machine. The Germans are retreating to the northwest, to Buddy. The fire of light T-26 no longer harms them, while the German 75mm still bring devastation to our ranks. On the Iranian flank, on the neutral strip, a T-26 is moving towards us, towing another one, which has been hit. The gun of the wounded one is looking down, its stern is smoking. That's right, there's no one in it. "I think it's the company man towing it," my neighbour says to me, looking at the tugboat. "Well done." He admires me. He took it right out from under the Germans' noses. "Don't say GOP until you jump over," Nikitin says anxiously, looking the same way. I am looking too. A German tank is quickly approaching the slowly creeping tugboat. He goes strictly in the back of his head, and behind him in the distance stopped a few German cars. Their crews must be watching the sneaking predator. I understand his maneuver covering a wounded, towed tank. He seeks to get closer, so that then, turning to the side, to shoot the towing tank from the move. With a sinking heart, I watch him sneak up on the towing tank. How can I help, I ask myself. With despair, I order Gadyukchka forward, hoping at least to take revenge on the German, but immediately I shout, "Stand down." From the tower of the tugboat, one after another 2 people fall out. Having jumped from the stern to the towed tank, they disappeared in the open hole of the driver's hatch. The gun of the hit tank shuddered, rose to meet the pursuer and twice threw out a tongue of flame. The German tank stumbled and froze, emitting a trickle of smoke. "Now GOP." Enthusiastically shouts Nikitin. I am burning with impatience to find out who this hero is. I hurry to meet him. From the turret hatch of the tank shows his head. Frolov. Him. I recognize him and joyfully wave his hands, and he, signaling me, asks me to stop the towing car. Probably there is a wounded crew in the tank, I think, and running up the nose of the towing vehicle, I give the mechanic the signal stop. I am delighted. I want to kiss Frolov. How easy, how naturally he got out of a seemingly hopeless situation. Would I have been able to find such a way out? After all, even standing on the sidelines, I could think of nothing better than to rush into a counterattack under the 75mm cannon of the German. No, I guess I'm not up to Frolov yet. I remember the first meeting with Frolov. He made an unimportant impression on me then. I was looking for in him. Hero of the Soviet Union, some special, eye-catching qualities, but I did not find anything at all outstanding in him, or, even more so, in what he said. A collective farm tractor driver, I thought disappointedly at the time, listening to him berate one of his commanders for poorly oiled undercarriage and uncleaned air filters. I especially did not like his manner of sprinkling his speech with sayings, sometimes of rather dubious quality, and asking riddles, also rather rude. Now he stands in the midst of the smoking battlefield, as unattractive as he looks, but I look at him with different eyes. After all, in full view of me, going at the head of the battalion's combat order with his light tanks, he overturned and defeated the enemy, 5 times stronger than him in terms of the number of vehicles, moreover, surpassing him in terms of firepower and armor thickness. Finally, this resourcefulness. Together with Nikitin, I helped Frolov and his turret man to pull out of the tank wounded crew members. In the tanker, with his head thrown back and bloodied face, on which old burns have not yet healed, I recognized the tank commander, Petty Officer Nikolai Petrenko, the hero of the first battle of the division at Krasny. He is unconscious. For a moment comes to his senses, asks where are the Germans and falls back into oblivion. Mechanic, mechanic, why backwards? He shouted in delirium as I laid him on the stern of the tugboat. Leaning over the dying man, Frolov told him that the Germans were defeated and had fled, and Petrenko came to himself again for a moment, recognized Frolov and asked him to write a letter. Write that I am honest, as it should be, he whispered, and stretched out as if to make himself comfortable. Dead, said Frolov, and lowered Petrenko's hand. Everyone took off their helmets. When we were returning from the battlefield, I asked Frolov, "How did it occur to us to shoot from a tank that had been hit?" "This is the science of war," he smiled. "Something similar happened to me in Finland. There, 2 skiers followed the tank I was towing with grenades. My Bashna had to move into our trailer to stop this cat-and-mouse game. As you can see, I just repeated. Yes, this is what I've been missing, I thought. Although we've won, but we're getting more and more unpleasant information. Mazayev's battalion had only 1/3 of its vehicles, 1/3 of its ammunition, and the same amount of fuel left in the refueling station. While we were repulsing the German attacks in Bielogrodka and Tritony, the Germans along the highway to Dubno attacked Verba twice. They were repulsed, withdrew, but now they are preparing for another attack. After the battle, barely our tanks withdrew into the forest and Popel and Vasiliev settled down to drink tea, using KB's nose as a table, and excited Bolkovitinov and Frolov came up to us. "What has happened?" Popel asked, wiping sand off an aluminum mug. Bolkovitinov reported that in his assigned area of defense Pyrotin Morji Ptitichki, exposed in the morning Bosbo Guard was not found, and Frolov, who went there to wiggle the boundary, almost fell into German hands. "There the Germans are hastily concentrating for an attack," said Bolkovitinov. His words were confirmed by a mine that flew over us and exploded nearby. Behind the edge of the forest, a few kilometers away, the Germans are preparing for an attack. Mines are exploding in the forest, and yet Popel is drinking tea with relish, and his eyes, from the corners of which wrinkles radiate, as always, look questioningly. "What are you saying?" Vasiliev, too, is drinking his tea with pleasure. "I don't understand how can one drink tea calmly on a tank when a mine is about to explode nearby. My mouth is dry, my rough tongue rubs against my palate. I involuntarily step towards the tank, under the protection of its armor. The Germans have a desire to disengage our defenses," concludes Popel. Well, Colonel," he turns to Vasiliev, "it is necessary for this hope to burst like a soap bubble. Oh devils, how they roast. And they don't spare mines. So they are preparing for an attack," summarizes Vasiliev, and suddenly turns to Bolkovitinov. I know, Lieutenant Colonel, that you're not a coward, but nevertheless get closer, behind the vehicle, cover yourself from the mine. Why lose the regiment commander just before the battle? So that's why he's calm, I thought. What I did involuntarily, ashamed of my timidity, he does consciously, calculatingly. It would be good, Comrade Colonel, to strike the Germans suddenly, now Frolov said hotly. Yes, it will be good. Oh, how good. Popple agrees with him. They are preparing for the attack. They're busy preparing, they don't know where our tanks are, so we'll hit them at once, with all our forces closer here, and then on Verba. What will the regiment commander say? Asked Popple Bolkovitinov, looking at the map under the celluloid tablet. Attack, immediately attack. A radio operator looked out of a covered car with a large pin antenna. Have you contacted the Corps? Popple asked him. No, Comrade Brigade Commissar. Yes, it's bad, Popple, it's bad, Popple stretched out, so we're all alone. Well, alone, so alone no one will interfere. Like Colonel Vasiliev, eh? The tankers are just advancing, answered the commander. Yes, here we must attack sooner. We'll keep the defence by advancing. It's a pity. I don't know what is done on the right flank, said Popple. Calling Bolkovitinov, he gave him the order to attack the village of Morgy-Pitiski with 2 battalions. Above the control centre bullets whizzing by, echoing the roll of machine guns. Crouching, 2 men are walking through the forest. Where have I seen these white homespun shirts sticking out from under their vests, this tall, thin, slightly hunched figure in a soft hat with saggy brim? They were the acquaintances of the morning who offered us the collective farm pigs. What are those white-sided magpies? Vasiliev asks the adjutant. Take them away immediately. They are collective farm shepherds, I say, and briefly tell about the meeting with them. Call them in. Orders Vasiliev. The adjutant rushes after the shepherds, timidly crouching under the snapping bullets, but still with a bow and hats in their hands. My acquaintances approach us. Germans, why didn't you immediately report to me about the herd? Vasiliev addresses the regimental commissar. I didn't think it possible to receive it. We have no right to draw up documents, and so it looks like looting. What? Vasiliev interrupts. But we'll talk about that later. Where are your pigs? He asks, addressing the collective farmer. They were killed near Stolbets. The collective farmer looks at us anxiously, frightened. You'll go there with my commander, says Vasiliev, and give him the pigs by deed. No, shrieks the collective farmer. I won't go there for anything. Their German has taken them. How German? They drove off in cars and started shooting at the pigs and at us. Our 3rd comrade was killed. Good, we've gone to the foxes. This message stunned everyone. So there are Germans behind us too. There was an oppressive silence. Popple was the first to break it. So much for fresh meat for a soldier. Masha is good, but not ours, he said, and looking eloquently at the regimental commissar, began to ask the collective farmers where they had met the Germans and whether they had seen a lot of cars, guns and tanks. Everything is clear, we are cut off from the Kremenets side as well. What do you intend to do now? Popple asked. If you give us a Rushnitzer, I'll be a German for you. If you don't give us, we'll trap them in foxes. OS, together with Nut, said the tall man, pointing at his companion. We know foxes as well as we know our own, all the way to Tarnopol. You can't turn back home. And why? We can't, the 2nd collective farmer hastily answered. Herman is dead. Vin organised the collective farm, I organised the farm. Toyarke Kirkel wanted his losses, and now, and he waved his hand hopelessly, even less. We must fight them. Otherwise there will be no life, said the tall man with conviction. You are right, Uncle Popiel said, patting him on the shoulder. We'll give the Rushnitzer and work. The attack is coming soon. The Germans are not slowing down. The outskirts of Pitiski village have come to life, and the Germans must be about to start. Who's earlier? Overhead, In the direction from which we are waiting for Ryabyshev, squadron after squadron of German bombers are passing by. They are accompanied in pairs, thin as wasps, sharp-nosed messers. Strange why we are not bombed. Vasiliev calls me.